Hi, so I just wanted to say I do believe in using realistic language to talk about life and to make sure that you are on the same page with what your reality is telling you so you can be more aware. But I have a problem with saying things like, I will never be able to buy a house. I will never be able to afford a house. I will never be able to afford to have children. Things that are major aspects of not just life in the modern world, but of existing as a human being. Reproduction and children and fertility, while not everybody has them and not everybody needs to, is a major part of being alive and being a human being that it should never be in the conversation that this is something you can never do, especially because of finances. And we should never get into the habit of saying that as if it's something that is solid and factual, because I think it's dangerous to make such a deep assertion, like I will never be able to have children because I can never afford them. That to me is a concept that I think is, even if you feel like it reflects reality, I think that it's dangerous. And I think it does something not only to the psyche, but I think also spiritually, putting that narrative out there and being a lot of low income people that are saying that, it's wiping out, first of all, a large majority of the world. Most people in the world are low income. Most people in the world are poor. And it also completely rewrites history, because for most of human history, most people have been poor. It's like not like we were always like, first of all, even these class systems, they're so complicated and weird and change depending on the times and what you consider valuable. But from today's standpoint, people have always been poor, and poor people have always been having children, because it's not so much about wealth and how much money you have, but more so about community access and programs of support and what kind of society you have, and how that creates an environment for whether it is children friendly, which is human friendly. Because if you live in a society that's not kid friendly, you're living in a world that's not human friendly, and you're living in a world that is not like friendly to existing. We live in a world right now that is very combative against existence, which is why you can even say things like Canada is not a child-friendly country because of our lack of support for a child care system. But it doesn't have so much to do with money, I think, than it does have to do with our systems, which I don't think is an outlandish statement to make. But I think the same thing should be said for housing as well. Well, it's not standard across all cultures that everybody has their own house and things like that. And so that can just be cultural and a luxury and personal based off of what you want. I've heard so many people my age, I'm 24, saying with like clarity and like assertion that they will never be able to own a home. They will never be able to have a house. They will be renting for the rest of their lives. And they're not saying this with some type of like they're okay with that. They're saying that as like in grief. They're saying that while mourning, but they're saying that as if that is the firm reality. And even if our system reflects that, and even if your life reflects that, I think it is not something we should be saying, and it is not something that should just be like commonly tossed around and everybody accepts this, and especially as the working class people, we take that on and we're just like, this is like our slogan now. I think there's something sinister about it and dangerous about it. And to me, it doesn't make sense to adopt that kind of mindset, even if it feels true for you. I think that we've become disillusioned because of the online world, and our online world being run really by people who have access to more, or we perceive to have access to more. And it has always been true that working class people, poor people, the regular people have always been more hopeful than the rich and the wealthy, because hope kind of grows in places that are dark and dingy. Hope thrives in the struggle a lot more than it does in an affluent life where you have nothing to need. Hope requires need. Hope requires sacrifice. So poor people, the people, have always been a very hopeful group on the planet. It has always been the top 1% that have been the most miserable and have been the ones that are trying to clinch at this experience of faith or spirituality or something existing beyond them, a higher force, which is why they end up creating such sinister religious systems and spiritual practices. And we see our spiritual community being taken over by that now with just the influx of like wealth content into spirituality. But we are being told these days that it is natural and normal and almost like the natural reality of someone who does not have as much, who is less privileged, less income, to be hopeless and to be naysayers and to be pessimistic and to be nihilists. And that's just actually not a reflection of reality. And you can see that because people will go to these other countries that we call third world countries, and they'll be like, how are the people so happy? And it's always what you see on videos of like little African kids dancing in a village. And they'll be like, oh, they're so happy despite it all, blah, blah, blah. There's so much happening in this video that I'm talking about right now. But the point is, don't forget who you truly are, who you naturally are. Hope is available to us naturally because of our circumstances. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't want to move beyond these circumstances. We should be constantly wanting to evolve. But one of the gifts of being from the working class, from being poor, from being from the masses, from being from underprivileged, is that we have a natural affinity and talent for creating faith, for creating spiritual magic, for creating hope just through our everyday living, because it's what pushes us. Faith is what pushes us. It's not money. It's not stability and security. It's faith and it's hope and it's belief that gets you through every day. Whether you really truly believe that or not, it's like, what else gets you through other than your faith and other than your hope? And beyond that, I just don't think that we should be asserting the negatives of something as big as housing and children when it comes to our reality and what's possible for us. I don't think anyone should ever be taking on the mindset that they will never be able to afford children or never be able to afford housing or anything like that, because it's, first of all, it's an insane thing to say. It's an insane thing to say because it's a human right to be able to have children and reproduce. It's a human right. It's a biological right. Even for those who struggle with infertility, just being able to have access to younger humans, to babies, to newborns, to be able to be connected with new life, with new human life. I believe that is a fundamental human right. I believe that every human needs to be able to have a connection to a baby, to a newborn, to watch children grow up. I think it's for our development. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know any creature that grows up in complete isolation and that never gets to engage or interact with the earlier forms of their own species' life. You know, it's like we need that. It's very important. So access to children, whether that's through having your children yourself or raising children or just being around them, it's a fundamental human right. And money has nothing to do with whether you will be able to have that. And that should never even be a part of the conversation. Because once we start to assert that, they can use that as like a line to be like, well, you can't afford the kids, you can't afford to do, like, what the fuck does that even mean, And then same thing with housing. Like, you need somewhere to live. It's not enough, like, we're not living, it was never a thing that we were just living out in the wind. Our ancestors always had some type of house. We always had some type of housing. To be completely unhoused it's insane. It's insane that is a reality of today. And the only reason it's able to be such a reality is because of this idea that you can't afford. Like, what does it mean to afford? You know what I mean? So those types of statements, I think, are dangerous, and we need to work actively to not say them. Do not say, I will never be able to afford, I can't afford a house. Do not say, I will never be able to afford children. Do not say that.